Yeah, I made a song,
You know,
yes.
people see that and they'll say that fuels the rumors that Pap is with Claressa because Claressa takes care of him. Claressa gives him money.
What? It was a card game. Is that what they would do with that?
Yes.
Well, I'm saying that's how they paint our narratives. But I will tell you something though. Pat pays my mortgage.
Y'all, this wasn't supposed to go this far. What started as a few slick posts and quiet trolling suddenly turned into something much darker, something messier, something that no one in that room was ready for. Because the moment Claressa Shields sat down on the Breakfast Club, the energy shifted. This wasn't just another interview. This was a confrontation disguised as conversation. And then it happened. One question, simple, direct, but loaded. Papoose. Money. And the name nobody expected her to address this directly, 50 Cent. For a split second, silence. You could feel it. The tension. The hesitation. The weight of everything that had been said online, everything that had been building behind the scenes. And then, she spoke. Not soft, not careful, but calculated. What came next wasn't just a denial, it was a warning. Allegations, lies, narratives spiraling out of control. She didn't just push back, she exposed the chaos behind it. And just when it felt like things couldn't get more uncomfortable, she dropped another bomb. Money, power, control in her relationship. The exact rumors the internet had been feeding on, confirmed, denied, and twisted all at once. Now the room wasn't just tense, it was divided. Because this wasn't just about rumors anymore. This was about reputation, about legal threats, about a line that had clearly been crossed. And the real question is, if this is what she's willing to say on camera, what is she still holding back?
Get nobody a platform but myself. But I've never had a sexual or romantic relationship with that dude.
It didn't start as a scandal. There was no breaking headline, no official statement, no dramatic press release. Just a few posts, a few reactions, and a name that kept popping up where it didn't belong. At first, people brushed it off. Because in the world of celebrities, especially online, tension is normal. Trolling is expected. And when it involves someone like 50 Cent, most people assume it's just another calculated moment for attention. But this felt different. Because this time, the target wasn't just any influencer or artist trying to go viral. It was Claressa Shields, a world champion, a public figure who had built her image on discipline, dominance, and control. Someone who doesn't just react, she responds. And that's exactly what made this situation spiral. Because what started as subtle jabs quickly turned into something much more personal. Allegedly, posts began circulating, narratives forming, and whispers growing louder by the hour. Not just about her career, not just about her personality, but about her private life, her relationship, her character. And once those lines are crossed, things don't stay casual. They escalate. At first, it was indirect. People online began questioning her relationship with Papoose, suggesting things, twisting moments, turning small details into full-blown accusations.
There is time to be new. I read my Jesus calling, I look at the Bible verse of the day, and then I get online. And then 50 is trolling me. 50 Cent, the mogul, trolling me. First thing I thought to myself, well, he trolling me and Pap. What the hell?
Who's really paying for what? Who's benefiting from who? Is this real, or is this strategic? And then, the narrative shifted. Suddenly, it wasn't just fans talking. It felt like something bigger was pushing the conversation. Because when a name like 50 Cent enters the mix, it doesn't stay small. It multiplies. Every post becomes a headline, every reaction becomes content, every silence becomes suspicious. And that's when things got uncomfortable. Because instead of ignoring it, instead of letting it fade like most online drama, it kept growing. New Year's Day. A moment that's supposed to be about fresh starts, clean energy, resetting everything. But instead, it became the spark. Allegedly, that's when things went public. Trolling turned direct, subtle turned obvious, and suddenly, Claressa's name was being dragged into conversations she never asked to be part of. No warning. No context, just noise.
Instead of him responding like the mogul that he is and getting in the booth, he decided to lie on my cat and try to paint out this narrative that I slept with this guy, and that never happened.
And here's the part that made it worse. She didn't understand why. According to her, there was no history, no tension, no behind-the-scenes fallout that the public knew about. So when it happened, it didn't just feel random. It felt intentional, calculated. Like her name was being used, not for truth, but for traction. And in today's digital world, that's all it takes. One big name attaches itself to yours, and suddenly, your story isn't yours anymore. It belongs to the internet. Speculation took over. People started connecting dots that weren't even there. Old clips resurfaced, moments were reinterpreted, and narratives started forming faster than facts. But what really pushed this over the edge wasn't just the trolling. It was what came after. Because once the rumors reached a certain level, they stopped being harmless. They became damaging. Allegations started circling that directly targeted her integrity, her image, her identity. And that's when silence stopped being an option. Because there's a difference between letting people talk and letting people define you. So instead of tweeting, instead of posting, instead of going back and forth online, she chose something else. Something more controlled, more direct, and far more dangerous. A chair, a microphone, and a platform where every word matters. The Breakfast Club. That's where everything changed. Because once she sat down, this wasn't internet drama anymore. This became a statement. And what she was about to say would either shut everything down or make it even worse.
That's why now my lawyers has been in contact with his lawyers, and we sent them a cease and desist. Stop lying on my cats. Call me ugly, call me handsome.
The room felt different the moment she sat down. No chaos, no shouting, no headlines yet, just controlled silence. Across from her, the hosts leaned in, not just for answers, but for clarity. Because by this point, the internet had already made up its mind. Narratives were locked in, opinions were loud, and her name was everywhere. The Breakfast Club wasn't just another stop. This was where stories either collapse or explode. And when the question finally came, it didn't come gently. It came direct. Papoose. Money. And the name sitting at the center of the storm, 50 Cent. For a second, she didn't speak. Not because she didn't have an answer, but because she knew whatever she said next would travel. Clipped. Reposted. Analyzed. Weaponized. Then she leaned forward. And everything shifted. She didn't laugh it off. She didn't dodge it. She didn't redirect. She addressed it. Directly. Allegedly, she made it clear there was no hidden connection, no secret involvement, no truth to the narratives being pushed. What people were repeating, what blogs were amplifying, what timelines were feeding on. She called it what it was. Lies. But this wasn't just denial. It was controlled frustration. Because beneath her words, there was something else. Confusion. Why her? Why now? Why was her name suddenly tied to something she claims had no reality behind it? She explained how it all seemed to start out of nowhere. A random moment turned into a targeted situation. No warning. No conversation. Just public noise. And that's what made it dangerous. Because when something false spreads fast enough, it stops needing proof. It becomes belief. And belief is harder to fight than facts. But then, she did something unexpected. Instead of just shutting down rumors, she opened a door. A door the internet had already been trying to force open. Her relationship with Papoose. The same relationship people had been dissecting, questioning, and reducing to one narrative. Money. And right there, live, she addressed it. Not defensively. Not nervously. But confidently. She revealed that he takes care of her in ways people weren't expecting. That the dynamic being painted online wasn't the reality she was living. And just like that, the room shifted again. Because now, it wasn't just about 50 Cent. It wasn't just about allegations. It was about perception. The internet had one version. She had another. And both couldn't be true at the same time. That's when the tension peaked. Because even as she spoke with confidence, the implications of what she was saying added more layers to an already complicated narrative. If the rumors were false, why did they spread this far? If the relationship was real, why did it look so different from the outside? And if 50 Cent's involvement was just trolling, why did it feel so targeted? These weren't questions she answered directly, but they hung in the air. Heavy, uncomfortable, unresolved. And then, her tone changed. Slightly, but noticeably. Because this wasn't just about clearing her name anymore. This was about drawing a line. She made it clear people can have opinions. They can judge what they see. They can even dislike her. But when it comes to her character, her integrity, her reality, there are limits. And according to her, those limits had been crossed. That's when the conversation took its most serious turn. Because she didn't just defend herself. She hinted at consequences. Legal ones. Not loud. Not dramatic. But enough to shift the energy in the room. Because once lawyers enter the conversation, this isn't content anymore. It's risk. And suddenly, what started as online chatter felt like something much bigger. Something that wasn't going to end with just an interview. Because now, there were stakes. Real ones. And if what she was saying was true, then someone was about to be held accountable. By the time the interview started wrapping up, it didn't feel like closure. It felt like the beginning of something much bigger. Because even though Claressa Shields had finally spoken, finally addressed the noise, finally pushed back against the narratives, the tension didn't disappear. It multiplied. Clips started circulating within minutes. Short segments, carefully cut moments, Specific lines pulled out and reposted over and over again. The same phrases, the same expressions, the same reactions. Looped, analyzed, debated. And, just like that, the internet took control again. Some people believed her instantly. They saw confidence. They saw honesty. They saw someone standing firm under pressure. But others? They saw something else. They questioned the timing. They questioned the delivery. They questioned what wasn't said, just as much as what was. Because in situations like this, silence between words becomes louder than the words themselves. And then came the headlines. Not full interviews. Not full context. Just fragments. Claressa responds. Money claims revealed. Legal action hinted. Each one pushing the story further, but never fully explaining it. And right in the center of all of it was still one name. 50 Cent. Because even though Claressa had spoken, he hadn't. Not fully. Not directly. And that silence? It didn't calm anything down. It made everything worse. Because when one side speaks and the other doesn't, the internet fills in the blanks. Speculation turns into assumption. Assumption turns into narrative. And narrative becomes reality for millions of people watching from the outside. Some believed he was waiting, calculating, letting the moment build before responding. Others believed something else entirely. That maybe, just maybe, the situation had gone further than expected. Too far. Because once lawyers are mentioned, once warnings are hinted, once reputations are publicly challenged, there's no easy way to walk it back. And that's where things took a darker turn. Because behind the scenes, allegedly, this wasn't just about posts anymore. It was about pressure. The kind that doesn't show up in captions or clips. The kind that builds quietly. Through calls. Through messages. Through conversations that never reach the public. But change everything. And while the world focused on the viral moments, on the bold statements, on the surface-level drama, there was something deeper unfolding. Something heavier. Because for Claressa, this wasn't just content. This was her name. Her credibility. Her identity. And no matter how strong someone appears on camera, there's always a moment, off camera, where it hits differently, where the noise gets louder, where the weight becomes real. Allegedly, this was one of those moments. Because as the days went on, the conversation didn't slow down. It evolved. People started digging. Old interviews resurfaced. Past interactions were re-examined. Every detail, no matter how small, was pulled into the spotlight. And suddenly, it wasn't just about what happened now. It was about everything. Every move. Every word. Every connection. And somewhere in the middle of all that, the original truth started getting harder to find. Because when too many voices speak at once, clarity disappears. All that's left is noise. And in that noise, two completely different stories existed. One where Claressa was defending herself against false narratives, and one where something bigger was being hidden behind controlled answers. Both couldn't be true, but both had believers. And that's what made this situation impossible to ignore. Because no matter which side you were on, one thing was clear. This wasn't over. Not even close. Because if 50 Cent decides to respond, everything changes again. If legal action actually moves forward, everything escalates. And if more information surfaces, then what we've seen so far might just be the surface. Because situations like this, they don't end quietly. They build, they shift, they expose, and sometimes, they reveal things no one was supposed to see in the first place. So now the question isn't just who's right, or who's wrong. The real question is, what happens next? Because if this really was just trolling, it wouldn't have reached this level. And if this really was just rumors, it wouldn't feel this serious. Which means one thing. Somewhere between what was said and what wasn't said, there's a piece missing. And until that piece comes out, this story stays unfinished, unstable, and dangerously open-ended. And now everything comes down to this moment, because no matter how controlled that interview looked, no matter how calm her voice sounded, something underneath it all didn't sit right. Because when someone is forced to defend their name this hard, this publicly, this intensely, it means the damage has already been done. The internet didn't wait. It never does. It picked sides, twisted narratives, and turned fragments into full-blown stories before the truth even had a chance to breathe. And now, what started as alleged trolling has turned into something much heavier, something that feels calculated, personal, and dangerously close to a point of no return. If what Claressa is saying is true, then someone used one of the biggest platforms in the world to push a narrative that could destroy her image. But if there's even a small piece missing from her side, then this entire situation could flip in ways nobody is prepared for. And let's be real. When lawyers get mentioned, when warnings get issued, when reputations are put on the line like this, it doesn't just fade away. It escalates. Because silence from the other side isn't peace, it's pressure building. And if 50 Cent decides to respond, Not with jokes, but with receipts. This situation could explode in seconds. So now the real question isn't what happened. It's what's about to happen next. Because one response, one leak, one mistake could change everything overnight.